Hi guys and welcome back. So today I'm going to be giving you guys a tutorial on how to draw using Photoshop, and up here I just have a few examples of some of the work that I have done using Photoshop. So just to kind of show you guys what you can do, you can kind of create like a more realistic drawing, a more painterly drawing, or even a more cartoon drawing using Photoshop. So let's get started. Okay, and right here we have the Wacom that we have inside the computer lab, and this is the stylus that comes with the Wacom. And as you can see, it's like a really big tablet and it allows you to see everything nice and big. Okay, so I'm just going to show you guys how to get started with some good Adobe brushes. So, you just go on like the Adobe website, and I think the best one to start out with is the Mega Pack right here because it has a lot of different options to try out. And then this is what it's going to look like once you have your brushes downloaded onto Photoshop and you have your brush panel open. So you can see here, I'm just kind of click around and show you guys all the different options that come with it. So as you see, we have the erasers, we have the drawing box. Over here, it's just more brushes and it goes on and on and on. So you can see why this is a good pack to kind of start off with because you just have all these different options that you can try out. So one of my personal favorite ones would have to be the gouache brushes. I don't know, I just really like them, and this is one of them that I'll try out for you right now. And as you can see, and I'll zoom in a little bit more so you can just see kind of like the actual shape of the actual brush, how it's like nice and textured like that. So it can help you create those lines of texture within your drawing. And here is a different one. This is a charcoal brush, and you can just see that varying texture and also the varying size of the brush. And here I'm just putting some side by side. So this one is a graphite brush, which is a different graphite brush. And we'll try out some oil brushes just to show the difference in the kind of texture. And you can see how this one is more smooth and how it emulates like real oil paints in real life. And with this specific brush as well, you are able to kind of mix your colors together, which is really nice. And you can tell by that symbol up there, kind of that droplet with the paintbrush, that it is a mixer brush. Okay, and then here I'm just going to show you guys how you can save brushes that you really enjoy using and know that you're going to use again in your drawing. So you just go ahead, click that plus button, make sure you click the check mark on the brush size and the color. You can name it to whatever you want, press OK, and then you'll have it up there ready to go when you are in between using different brushes. You can go ahead and click, and you see you have your brush saved right there. Okay, and then right here, I'm just going to show you guys how you can get started on drawing on Photoshop. So if you have a reference image, you can add it to your document on a new layer, and you can also change the opacity of your image if you want. But let's start on a new layer here, and just clicking the option tool, you get that eyedropper tool, and I'm able to select a color from my reference image. And I'm going to go back to my gouache brushes that I like and just begin painting. So go ahead, option select. And here I'm showing you that if you kind of like rotate your wrist with the stylus in hand, how the actual brush reacts to those motions. So here I'm kind of swaying side to side to swipe my color along my Photoshop document. So here I have another color selected, and you can see going back to my option, selecting and just trying to blend those two colors together. And with your X key on your keyboard, you're able to switch easily between those two most recently selected colors. So here I'm making my brush bigger by using the bracket tool, or the bracket key on your keyboard. The right key makes it go up, left bracket key makes it go down in size. So again, just option selecting for my colors, swiping my colors, just trying to get like the general shapes and colors that I see outlined, just kind of like the overall shape. And if you make a mistake like I did just there, you can just quickly undo with Command Z. So that's the beauty of painting on Photoshop, right? So just continuing to blend my colors together, you can see how the brush is like moving with my hand as I rotate my hand around. Here, just getting the tree. So I'm pressing that left bracket on my keyboard to go down in size. Just trying to trace the general outline of my tree right here. Just a quick sketch for you guys, but this is typically how I would start drawing on Photoshop. So right bracket key to make my brush size bigger, quickly dragging. My hand is probably like this right now, dragging. Let's see. And I just want to show you guys that by adding a new layer, right? Like you can either add more details or more highlights and shadows. So I would recommend making your drawing in like layers. So like, for example, like I could have done like the grass in one layer and the sky in one layer just to keep everything separated. So if you do make a mistake, it's not a big deal. You can just kind of like adjust the layer. So here you can see I'm like adding details, like very subtle details. And as I'm moving my drawing around, you can see that I have that separated layer for the details. So another thing that we can do right here is that we can create a group from our layers. And this also helps us keep more organized throughout the drawing process. So just created a group for my painting. And you can unsee and see them all in one moment by just clicking that eyeball button next to the grouping photo. And let's say you're like, I don't really like how this tree looks right here. You can use your lasso tool by pressing L on your keyboard, and you can shift around the position of the tree in your drawing. But just keep in mind that it will also move everything else that's on that layer. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe it's best to kind of create separate layers for each thing in your drawing, because if I had a separate layer for my tree, I wouldn't be running into that issue. And here, if you double click F 2 times on your keyboard, you're able to take away all the toolbars and just focus more on your drawing without any extra distractions. And then over here, I'm just kind of showing you guys how the pressure sensitivity works using these brushes. So if you go in with like a very light hand and start going more heavy handed towards the end, you can kind of get that nice flow of like a line going on. And I'm just using different mediums, so like the gouache and the inking, just to kind of show you the varying kind of textures that they will give depending on the pressure sensitivity. And then here, I just kind of wanted to show you guys an example of one of my finished works. I think this was shown earlier in the video, but here I think I just used like one brush. It was the graphite brush. And as you can see, I had my reference image on a separate layer right next to it, just so I can easily reference it. And yeah, that's just one example. And then right here is an example of how I was able to animate one of my illustrations afterwards. So you can see it's just like very slight movements, but it does add a cute little element to your illustrations at the end. Okay, and right here is my Photoshop document for that illustration that I just showed. So just a quick look around, and as you can see in my layers tab, all the different layers that I have and how they are titled according to what is in that layer. So here I have like the dress store. You can see I've turned it on and off to show you that. I have the flower, I have the highlights on the windows, the chalk on the sidewalk. So all just on its own layer just to keep everything more organized. And here is Jordan, my girl character that you can see right there, and how I have her head on a separate layer because I knew that I wanted to move her head in the animation, so I made sure to keep that on a separate layer. Okay, and then here I'm just going to do a quick demonstration on how you can animate your illustration. So here you can see I have my head and my body outline on separate layers, and I'm just going to create a new group for them just to keep everything organized. And, I made them on separate layers to keep in mind that I just want my head to move on my final illustration. So now I'm just going to begin to color in my little character here. So I just created a separate layer underneath the group of my outline layers. And I'm just going to begin tracing around. And you just want to make sure like your coloring layer is underneath the outline layer, because it won't like overlap awkwardly onto your outline. So just make sure it's underneath the actual outline layer, your color layer. And then I'm just gonna go in with my paint bucket tool. You can find that in the gradient tool, or you can click G on your keyboard to access it. And as you can see, it just filled in my color right there. So I'm just gonna take my colored layer and merge it with my head layer right there, just to kind of reduce the amount of layers that I have in my document. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and repeat that process. So create a new layer under my body outline layer and just begin to trace the color around. And I would just say to make sure that there are no holes in your outline, as the paint bucket tool will not work like that. You need to make sure it's kind of like one completed line before using your paint bucket tool. So here I have my completed line, and I'm going to go ahead to my paint bucket tool and fill that in. Perfect. And then here, I just want to show you guys that when you do merge your layers, you need to be careful when either erasing things or when you want to like recolor something, as you know, now your outline and your color layer are merged together. Okay, so to begin the process of animating your illustration, you're going to go to the layer that you know you want to move, and you are going to make it a smart object. And then you're going to go ahead and change your workspace to be a motion workspace. And down here, you can see our timeline. We are just going to change our video or our timeline to be a video timeline. And then you can also move your timeline around the document if you want. So like so. And you can make it bigger. And let's see, once again, just create it or click on create timeline video again. And then we have all our layers that are in our document onto this little timeline bar. So you can see I have my group here. I have that color layer that I just made. I'm just going to go ahead and merge them together. And I can see like the previous layers that I was working on earlier in this video are still on my document. And I'm just going to get rid of them just so it's out of the way. So I'm just going to delete them. Okay, and then now I'm just left with my two layers. And I'm going to go ahead and click that transform button right there. And you can begin moving your image with your selection tool, however you want to move it. So I just want the head to move up and down. So I'm just going to go ahead and create that up and down motion between those 2 points. And I'm just going to continue to create those points. And I'm just going to copy and paste the same movement just to be consistent. And I'm just going to continue that throughout my little duration bar that you can see right there. So just copy and paste my movements. And as I go back there and I press play, you can see that my head is moving the way that I want it to move. So since I'm pretty happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and export it, press render video, and kind of just change the size and just go ahead and render my video. And then sometimes it might take a while, but luckily mine is a small document size, so it won't take too long, but just keep that in mind when you're exporting, it might take a bit. So we'll finish exporting, and then we could go ahead and check on our desktop and find it up there. It's an MP4, and we can press play to look at our little animation. And just keep in time, sometimes the timing might be different from your Photoshop document, so I'll just keep that in mind at the end. But yeah. Okay, so that is it for this video. I hope you guys got a better understanding on how to draw using Photoshop. If you have any questions, please leave them down below, and see you next time.